Testing. Testing. Oh, that sounds great.
What's up, guys?
And girls.
And girls. What's up, guys, gals, and pals? How we doing? Welcome to the My Friend's Basement Studio podcast. I'm Maxim.
I'm Connor.
And this is our studio. And this is our studio's podcast about the studio. Yep. I guess. Connor, what is this podcast to you?
To me, it's a show that gets to highlight some of what's happening in the studio. Mm-hmm. We get to spotlight some of the incredible creators that we have here. And it's a way for people to learn how to probably grow their podcast.
Yeah, hopefully.
What resources are available within Brooklyn. And then hopefully getting to know us and why it's valuable to collaborate in the creative space.
Hell yeah. I love it.
Did you know that before?
Yeah,
that was going to be okay.
Yeah. Good. We've spent months talking about all these little things. I also think they got to know what kind of resources are available in Brooklyn, and all of them are found at myfriendsbasementstudio@gmail.com. Email us for rates.
And My Friend's Basement Studio on social media, and then probably pretty soon, myfriendsbasementstudio.com or myfriendsbasement.studio.
Yeah, both very good. I think our listeners will agree.
Yeah, I think by the time we launch this, it's going to be really close to our website launch.
Nice.
Which is going to be exciting.
I'm very excited for that.
I am too. It's going to simplify things quite a bit in a number of ways.
Awesome. Well, I guess a lot of this, to me, this podcast, I think is going to be like, one, all these engagement things, tips, like stuff for podcasters, our like fan base, our show, the people who record here, their shows, their listeners who are interested in podcasting and knowing about where they want to record.
Yeah.
I think we can communicate all that, And I think part of it is just going to be the diary of growing this business in a way.
Absolutely. I think, going back to the last time we talked, that was before we had our first client in here.
Yeah,
So
we
that
had,
was
so there's an episode
May?
of my podcast, Don't Quit Your Day Job, which is on Instagram at DQYDJ_pod. But we talked about this in one of the episodes this year about like kind of the full backstory about why we wanted to do a studio.
Flashback.
Okay, so Connor, when did you first want to start a podcasting studio?
I think when we got to New York, when we were doing small town radio, I think there's a point maybe where both of us just went like, it sucks having to literally flip my bed up against the wall, pull out this room divider, roll a desk, string all the equipment, set up a camera, literally have to be checking our phone to see if the camera would die. We're like, I want to make content in a way that I can just step into it and basically be ready to go.
That was before we had our first client.
Before we had our first client, and we kind of talked about the high level of like the vision of the place. And for me, it was a lot about like the business side of comedy. That's always been my passion. I think that resonates through the episode on your show. And the big thing for me in this space is, and this podcast is probably going to be the business of comedy and the business of content creation.
Yeah.
By no means am I an authority in the space. I don't think either of us are.
I'm less of an authority than Connor is.
But I think what we bring, rather than saying, here's the tips, here's how we do it, is like, this is what we've tried, this is what works. And one of the most interesting I've heard, are you familiar with Mr. Beast?
Yeah.
I think most people are who are our age and go on YouTube.
The best marketing strategy is to give out a lot of money.
I mean, that's not a bad idea at all. But I think for me, one thing I heard, it was actually on Flagrant 2, they were talking about Mr. Beast. So secondhand information about from Mr. Beast. But they got 5 friends together, and for a year or a long period of time, they'd shared all their successes, all their failures, all that information in a group. And what they realized is if you have 5 people failing for 1 year, you learn 5 years worth of failure for your business in 1 year.
Wow.
So if we can be, sharing that information with our clients, or we're getting the feedback from our clients, what's going well with their podcast, what's not going well with their podcasts, we can actually fail faster, which means succeed faster. And since our podcast, I think we haven't officially gotten to this point yet, but we have 9 clients that have worked with us. And I think I was counting today 5 or 6 more who are
Yeah.
like, have expressed interest. So we are growing that number of that growth multiplier
Yeah.
rather quickly. What is it? 5, June, July, August, September, in 4 months, we're growing our growth, our knowledge multiplier rather quickly.
Yeah, like really quick. I'm honestly pretty surprised at one thing to note with these our client base right now is most of them are weekly recordings.
Yes.
Like weekly, or like they'll record 2 in a week and skip a week or something, but they're all regular customers. And I think a couple of the shows have just started to launch.
Yeah, we actually, so when we launched this, we'll have one podcast, or as of right now, we have one podcast that was ongoing before us, our first client, the Tony Awards.
Mm-hmm.
Great podcast. They're on hiatus right now. They're going to be coming back soon to talk about Keke Palmer in their next segment of shows. Check them out.
Fantastic show.
And then Danielle DeLudy just launched Female Intern.
Yep.
Both, though, are non-video
Yeah.
podcasts. And as hopefully a lot of people are watching on YouTube, the space is meant to be audio and video.
Yep.
So all the video podcasts, some of which have recorded half a dozen episodes or more, are going to be launching around the same time as our launch.
Yeah.
Which is going to be really exciting for us because we're just going to take our marketing efforts to the next level.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I'm also working really hard at marketing the space on my own podcast.
Yeah, and I got to start. I built the initial idea for building this space was so I just could have a podcast and not need to move anything. And I have not started a podcast yet.
It's so funny to me because, like, even starting this podcast, I feel like podcasting has become so streamlined in my head as like as a form of art and creation that I was like, last week we're like, we need to start the house podcast, and we were both just like, okay. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not like a big thing. Like, we're just getting so good at like hosting these things and figuring out the technical aspects.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of our early failures with our old show, Small Town Radio, which is still worth listening to, in my opinion.
A lot of people are wondering when it's coming back.
Are you serious?
Literally, when I go home, people are like, yeah, I really like that show.
Damn.
Is it coming back at some point? Who knows? Maybe we'll get to the point
Honestly,
where it's worthwhile.
like, one of the big failures, though, with that kind of resonates into what we have set up now, was just, it was all streamlining the technical stuff.
Yeah.
It was all audio editing. It was all like, when we tried branching out into video, but we didn't have it figured out in a way that like streamlined the process. And it backfired in that, like, it was too much work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably listening to the first couple episodes will know us as individuals.
Right.
But if people don't know us as individuals, we're also both comedians living in Brooklyn, performing in New York. And we actually
full-time job.
Yeah.
Over here.
I thought you were gonna say comedy was your full-time job. I was like, oh yeah, we can just lie about those.
Yeah,
things.
we can just lie about
I was like,
that.
this studio pays all my bills.
I've been doing this bit that's so I just got engaged.
Oh, congrats! I didn't know.
Yeah, you know. But like, I've been doing this bit on stage. Like, I just got engaged. Everyone claps, whatever. I go, yeah. And my fiance, she's also she's a comedian as well. And one thing that people don't realize, when two comedians get engaged, there's actually no ring. You just put a clown nose in the other person.
Oh.
And don't get me wrong. Okay, the clown nose, it still is the 3-month salary rule. So it's $2 for comedians.
I mean, yeah. Well, that ties into something else too, where like the whole $2 for comedians joke. It's really funny in the comedy scene because a lot of the comedians in Brooklyn know they're not making money doing comedy.
Right.
And then we've been very intentional in this studio trying to keep prices affordable. Like, what was it? If you do 1 hour of audio with a co-host, it'll cost you $100 for a month.
Yeah.
Which is going out to 3 fancy restaurants, not fancy restaurants, but like taking yourself out for dinner 3 times.
Yeah.
In a month.
Basically.
And it's like, okay, we can mentally justify that, where other studios in the city are a little bit more expensive. And they have the clients that love them and they serve their clients well.
Right.
But we're hopefully serving an audience that isn't able to access those studios. But to circle back to the whole reason I brought up comedies, we do an open mic in this space too every once in a while. And a comedian was here and he's saying some statistic, like if you've had 21 episodes, you're in the top 5% of longest podcasts of all times. or something like that.
It is insane. I found a site that like compiles RSS feeds and like does like data analytics based off it.
And-
So you type in your show, it
Yeah.
tells you where it's available, and then your like percentiles and your listeners by region. It's like very detailed. My show, which has 108 episodes, right?
Yep.
And I'm not huge on listenership.
That's 2 years. That's
over 2 years.
Just over 2 years.
So like I'm not the biggest show. I'm like, it's growing. There's a lot of people who love it and stuff like that. I realized it said I was in like the 96th percentile of podcast listenership, which I've said before is like not so much speaking to how well I've been marketing my show, but speaks to how many shows basically have to end for one reason or another. Like people can't get together, or it's too time consuming, or it's too expensive, whatever reason it might be. Like,
And for us, it was one, we were already having a little bit of trouble streamlining stuff because we were trying to do video without our equipment that we had here. And if you have a Canon, your camera automatically turns off after 30 minutes, or it stops recording after 30 minutes. So I'd have to have a phone set up where I could like check it. And then we had I literally put my bed against the wall, and behind this same curtain, actually, that's behind us if you're watching. And it's just like, this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's the idea the studio came up. And then the pandemic hit. We tried to do it remotely.
And that also killed our listenership.
And so
not literally, but like people weren't commuting during lockdown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we saw a significant drop, but it was like, all right, well, if there are people like us, comedians, who are already spending their time working a job, performing regularly, and now they have to teach themselves audio and video, and an RSS feed, for those who don't know, is how you distribute your podcast. So you need to understand how to distribute that podcast. Then you need to learn how to market your podcast, how to make clips. It's just like,
it's so much.
Do you have a life?
Right.
Do you just decide this is what I'm doing with my free time?
Yep.
Whereas if you come here like Shatha, I actually didn't tell you this, Shatha, who does
Comic Law,
hasn't launched yet. I think the launch date's going to be in December or January.
Nice.
We're talking about that's still up in the air, but Shatha's like, yeah, I literally don't have to think about anything. It is so easy to just come here and record. And that's what I do. I do my research. That's it.
Yeah. And that's like for us, like it's kind of nice how this has worked out, because it's just like sustainability and longevity is at the core of what we're doing. Like sustainability for us running the business, and sustainability for our clients, and that they always have a space to come to. It's reasonably priced, and it's like, you know what you're getting, the consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that is true, so we serve our target audience is comedians and creatives, mostly leaning towards comedians. And like, we accept other people here too, but like if we have to narrow it down, it's comedians and creatives. And comedy and the arts, it's all a long-term game.
Yeah.
It is, and like that's just the way it is. And so if you're thinking about any habit that you're doing long-term, if you put more barriers up in front of you, you have to do that, break that barrier every time that you do that repeatable task. And so if you can eliminate some of those barriers, you are going to get a lot further. You're going to be able to sustain, which is really the goal of a lot of the arts.
Absolutely. It's like, I've definitely talked about this before, but Jake and Amir from College Humor and Headgum, I've never met them, but they did a great episode.
We should have them on.
We should. That'd be very cool.
We could ask. Why not?
Yeah, we could try that. That'd be sick. But they said something. They had an episode that was like how to start a podcast, things to think about when starting a podcast, because they're in like the 450 episode range, like or even longer. But one of the things they said was like, when you start the podcast, one, you need some type of like structure. Like, it doesn't matter if the structure is like bullshit or whatever. It can be advice. Like, oh, throughout this episode, we're going to give advice, or we're going to have a series of questions or like talking points or something. But you need some type of structure, and you need a structure that is easy enough for you to repeat 300 times and not get bored. And that kind of extends into like beyond that. I really thought about like, you have to be able to do the physical podcasting that many times too. It's not like, oh, the idea can keep going. It's like, oh, the idea needs to keep going, and I need to keep being able to execute.
And then you also need to set up. You also need to make sure you're checking your levels as you go. You need to edit it. You need to export it. You need to publish it. You need to promote it. There's a lot of steps to podcasting. And
a big one for me is like, for me, it's like I think I'm the earliest recording at the studio. I'm like, I record at
Yeah.
noon every Saturday, and usually like Sunday or like Saturday night, I just need to block off like 2 or 3 hours just to like get all my ducks in a row, make sure the editing is lined up, get the video exported, get things uploaded, write the descriptions, have like the clip set up for last week, and make sure I got thumbnails. Like, it does take a lot of work.
It does, and that's the thing that I think leads to the statistic we were talking about,
Right.
which is why people don't last.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we are providing that solution, an
Mhm.
affordable solution to eliminate some of those barriers. And then eventually over time, as the studio grows, we can offer more services in terms of marketing. And like, again, we can fail faster. We're actively like, this is my goal very much next. The next two things are marketing and then figuring out marketing. Because again, we're not experts, but we're gonna work our asses off to figure out how to get everything done.
Yeah.
Because the information's out there. We just got to learn how to do it. And then the other thing is building the community.
Yeah.
Because another part of my personal mission is seeing my friends succeed at what they love to do and make a living at what they love to do. Because I feel like in my life, I've been super fortunate to be able to go after the things I want and be put in a position to build the studio.
Yeah.
And like, I got very lucky doing curbside comedy. I'm like, geez, I want other people to feel this. This is a really good feeling.
Yeah.
And then the community aspect, like it's, you amplify it as you build that community, how much joy you're creating when you see other people succeed, that you helped get there. It feels really good.
Yeah.
And then also we just share knowledge in between.
Yeah.
Like what we learn with marketing, we're going to pass on to our clients. What they learn, they're going to pass on to us. Literally, we're trying to set up Facebook groups so people and Instagram group chats so people can collaborate with each other. It's all about like sharing and growing the community.
I'm really excited about that aspect, and I'm really hoping like our like podcast host group chat has some activity, because I want that cross pollination. Like,
yeah.
And it's, I mean, we're not like a podcast network yet,
No,
but
not
that's kind of that's like my long term vision for the studio, is have like a full network where podcasts can like sign on with us, get advertiser money, and like, have a business in like a most evolved way, where we just have a pool of shows and personalities that you see reoccurring and you get to know them and stuff. But
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, I think it's true of most businesses, like most businesses that provide services. It can be repeated.
Right.
But there's so much work going on underneath the surface. It's the same as comedy, where you're like, you're saying these lines, but you're like reacting to all these different things and trying to set yourself up for the future. And literally, like, people will come in here, they'll be recording. We just had S&D, Sean and David in here, who will also be launching. And I had to like got outside, saw some sunlight for a little bit.
Yeah.
Then I got back and was like typing up a launch guide for those podcasts, because that's another barrier to entry. People have been recording, they're like, how do I launch this thing? How do I do it successfully? So we're going to create that resource at the beginning of their call. I was trying to learn about how to apply for grants to help make sure that we can keep prices low. Like, there's so many things, and like welcome to my friend's basement.
Yes. If you didn't hear, if we scrubbed that on the mic, someone definitely just fell down the stairs in the next room.
I hope they're okay.
Yeah, I hope they're good. But yeah, so let me ask you this. So in terms of like building this business, okay, and in terms of like, I guess we should have like weekly failures. What was an early failure for us? Early lessons learned for the studio so far?
I think focusing on social media too early was, I don't know. It was a failure in some ways, because I think I personally, because I was doing this, was spending a lot of time trying to create content and trying to rush things.
Right.
And trying to grow that platform. And in terms of business, something I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank recently, but I also think just in general in life too, it's healthy to be like, all right, this is the thing that's most important to me right now. I was like, I really want to figure out marketing a podcast, and I want to figure out how to do it on Instagram. And then I realize our core business right now is getting people into the studio.
Yes.
And I was like, then why am it took me like 2-3 weeks to be like, then why am I spending this time
Yeah.
on social media if that is not actively bringing people into the
Right.
studio?
It's almost like one thing that's interesting though is because we have a pool, our studio is answering the community need for
Yes.
something like this.
It
So it
is.
kind of works where I think there's definitely some business where like the social media precedes the clientele. In
Yeah.
our case, it was opposite, where it's like we're getting a client base and they didn't find us through Instagram. They find me or you at open mics or at shows and stuff, and they hear we have a podcast
Word of
studio.
mouth.
It's all word of mouth, which is cool and also saves you a lot of time making little videos and clips for the week.
And it also, like, eventually, now that we have a client base that I'm really happy with, and it's still continuing to grow naturally, like, this was the first, it always seems kind of towards the end of the month because we're at the end of September now, we're heading towards it. At the end of the month, we just hear from a lot of
Yeah.
people that want to start something.
Mhm.
And we didn't hear, I think it was like 2 weeks, we didn't hear from anyone. And then the last 3-4 days, we've heard from 3 different people who want to start something.
Yep.
And it was through no outreach. It was just like previous connection.
Yep.
A friend of a friend told someone. I love the phrase, be a friend, tell a friend. I think that embodies a lot of what the studio is. But
Definitely.
I think just realizing what your business is,
Mhm.
I didn't do that very well. And now that we have that, like, marketing can be a focus
Yep.
again. Figuring out how to really help podcasts thrive.
Because we're not like it's almost like we're redirecting our marketing efforts from we're marketing towards client towards now we're marketing towards listener and audience base.
Yeah, but you also need to think whenever you do social media or any type of marketing, who is this for?
Right.
Who is this serving? I was just putting stuff out there that was like, I hope we get followers.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, if I was a client coming in here, what would I want to see? Well, I would want to see a studio that's promoting the clients it already has
Yep.
with a bunch of resources, being very passionate. I want to see what their rates are.
Yep.
And I want to see that they have quality work.
Yes.
If those 3 things aren't covered in the social media,
Mhm.
then it doesn't matter if I'm following some trend or not. Like, I'm
Right.
not serving the audience that is our core business.
Totally. Absolutely. I think and being real with that is just like saves you a lot of time, a lot of energy, and like it's a good thing
It was
to
such a
learn.
relief.
And honestly, like so when we first kind of had the idea for the studio, right?
Yeah.
This is pre-pandemic 2019. We were
Yeah.
kind of like if we started a studio then, we would be having a much harder time finding clients.
Yeah.
And I think just over the years of like doing comedy in the city and just now I'd like know so many people that has been really easy to leverage. Like, oh, people know me. People are like getting to know Connor.
Yeah, I mean, they knew me and then I left.
Yeah, he left. But it's like building the business now, it's like we almost got to skip part of that first, like, we need to find clients. Because
Yeah.
we're just finding clients and they're coming in and it's feeling like a natural growth.
And it is a need.
Yeah.
Like, it was a very clear need.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know any comedian that's like, I would never do a podcast. We met one who's like, yeah, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But they're like, I just don't have an idea for one right now.
Right.
Who's on your podcast
Yep.
recently. And it was like, hey, that's super good self-awareness.
Mhm.
But they weren't like, ooh, podcast. They're just like,
Yeah.
it's not my thing. I'd rather focus on some other creative endeavor.
Also, I swear, I get so sick of seeing podcast clips on TikTok of people just in a living room with just whatever microphones, just like
God, the camera angles, the lighting.
The-
Not that it's perfect here.
Yeah.
We're getting there. I mean, that's part of the process.
But I'm like, something I really like about this, and I think when people see their own podcast videos or like watch my podcast, or like, they're like, it looks really nice. It's clean, got some lights, got some plants. It's like
People-
visually very nice. And
I wish we could capture it because people do walk down here and they're like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. That's usually the response. It's a positive, like, this is better than I thought.
yeah. It's also funny because in the grand scheme of the studio, what you're seeing on camera is what? An eighth of the overall space.
Yeah.
Like this is literally just the end of the room, and it's so long and there's so much more space down here.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of funny because people come down and I can tell they're like looking for the studio space they've seen. And it's like, no, it's way down there.
What about you though? Is there something, because we're 4 months in, we're a full fiscal quarter. We survived.
Wow. We survived
We
one
survived
quarter.
the bear market.
I guess my like lessons learned. One, if you get the Shure MV7, you need a cloud lifter.
Yeah,
Which
that's an upsell that people should pitch harder.
yeah, you should know that. Like I literally was watching a video the other day because I'm starting another podcast, not through the studio, but like a separate thing. And I was looking up cheap USB mics for my co-host, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, let's find some budgets. And I was looking at alternatives to like this mic because this is an excellent mic. It's expensive, but I
Yeah.
wanted him to get some that's like, oh, under $100, whatever, cheap, but sounds good.
Yeah.
And the video is like, so you've got the Shure MV7. As you know, if you have one of these, they're very quiet and you probably need to set your gain to 10 or use a cloud lifter. I'm like, that should be the first freaking thing in the manual. Because there was a week where I botched some recordings by not having them loud enough because we switched from some Sennheiser mics, which were very loud on their output, to
those are good
these.
mics.
And there was a big drop in audio. And so I had to boost. And then, it's like one of those things where it's like in photography, if you underexpose and you try to lighten, you get that noise.
Yeah,
Same thing
exactly.
in audio.
That's a great way to put it. I've never thought about it that way.
And yeah, it's all signal processing.
All right, engineer.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was a big lessons learned. I think another thing that's is not a painful process, and I think it's very good. And this is not like we tried one thing, it didn't work. This is going to be an ongoing growth for our whole business career.
Yeah.
But is the contract and modifying our rates, modifying our expectations, modifying our rules, because you can have a whole business plan envisioned in your head for like, okay, here's what we're going to allow people to do. Here's what we're not going to allow people to do. And you think you have everything. But then when the business starts, you're like, oh, we have all these edge cases we need to cover. People don't actually do this thing that we thought they would. So we need to rewrite for what they're actually doing and kind of figure out what the boundaries are and what they can and can't do in the space, especially because there's also roommates upstairs. This is a home and a studio. So drawing those boundaries has been interesting, and also our rates, like figuring out our rates. We like initially like, here's our audio rate, here's our audio and video rate, and then you can also hit us up for a quote if you're doing something beyond the scope what we normally do. But now we're finding it's like, oh, we actually do need to have rates for other services like multicam switching, like us being on the controls and switching between two cameras, or we actually do need to charge for the 30 minutes it can take sometimes to completely reconfigure the studio for a show.
What people don't even you can't see it. I'm pointing to it. There's a full couch there. If you watch clips from other podcasts that come out, including Glad You're Here or Y'all Had to Be Here, which is out already. Shout out to the guys that came out from LA and used the space.
Niles and
Company.
Yeah, and Company.
Yeah,
great way to say
Niles,
that.
Well, Niles was the one who interacted with us the most.
He hit me up on Twitter, yeah.
Which was awesome. But that couch that you can't see comes onto this stage, and we are physically moving it.
And it's also a circus couch, which just falls apart randomly. I don't know who designed it.
It's modular.
It's a modular couch. If you pick it up the wrong way, it falls apart, and then you are in the corner with a falling up. I don't know.
But
so
it's kind of go back to what you were saying though, because your rates, I think there's two takeaways from that, right? There's the one where it's like, it's okay to grow slow. Because if we had 30 clients, which we don't even have now, we're not even halfway there yet. But if we had 30 of them come in at once, we would have been screwed because we did not know, like we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know that, we learned after the second time moving the couch, like, that's not going to be a thing that is in our standard rate just because it's so much more work and we need to book off more time.
And also, it's not like only one of us can be here typically. You've done that by yourself a few times.
I have.
But it's a pain in the ass.
It is. And it's like you have to do it the day before and then you have to, like, it limits the turnaround time. But we didn't know that until it happened. And if a bunch of people were coming in and asking for it, we would have been screwed. We would have been frustrated. And there's other things like that in the growing process. In terms of like cable management, wiring with the mixer, so many things that like I'm thankful that we grew at a slow enough rate that we could figure it out and be like, oh, this happened one time. Here's the solution. Problem solved. Versus like, oh, I'm going to face that problem 30 times this week. And there's nothing I can do about it because I don't have time to address it.
Yeah, because in my nightmare scenario is like, oh, we got overbooked and we have 5 podcasts today, and 2 of them want the couch on the stage, and they're like sandwiched between 2 that want the
It
standard
almost
setup.
happened though.
Almost did.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like, okay, yeah, if you want us to deal with this, like, you gotta pay up a little bit,
I
you
think
know, which is fair
I
because
don't.
our rates are
Yeah.
very low. Okay,
Yeah.
we are very fair about our rates.
But I also think it's like you need to know who your clients are, and like
Yes.
that's something you're very good at saying. Like I think I am the type of person like I want to help everyone, and that's like a thing in business. You
Right.
can't serve everyone. Not
Yep.
everyone's in your audience, and like you also, if you're not taking care of yourself as a business,
Mhm.
business is never going to grow. I've been talking with some local business owners, people we're hoping to work with in the future. And he said something very profound, and he was like, most startups fail because they never start.
Yeah.
Like if you're not making money, you're not like taking care of yourself, you really can't get started.
Mhm.
The other point, I said there's 2 points. So the other thing was like making things very clear up front with clients.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we've been very thankful for the most part to have very great relationships with our clients.
Mhm.
And that is in a large part thanks to the fact that we're like, hey, this is what our contract looks like. Please let us know if you have questions. This
Mhm.
is what renting out studio time looks like. It's not your recording time that you're renting, it's the whole time that you're in the space. Like those things that are clear. And every time we've communicated that to people up front, never had an issue. If there are times where it's been forgotten, that is when confusion happens.
Right.
And then people don't like being told they have less than they thought they did, even if
Right.
it wasn't because we told them they had more, it's just because it wasn't communicated. That's
Right.
not how it works.
Exactly.
And that's another thing that person, the local business owner, was talking about. Like, hey, communication up front, setting those expectations. That's not a good business lesson. That is a good life lesson.
Yep.
That I'm not good at in life, but I'm learning that through business and like through the
Yeah.
interpersonal relationships with clients.
Yep. And I think the whole thing, like that is also something with the contract process. Is one, we send these people a contract. If there's 2 or 3 people on this podcast, maybe 1 to 2 of them are going to read it.
Yeah.
The other one's going to be left out. It's like some of the big things you just got to say up front. Okay, guys, welcome to the studio. Just so you know, this is in the contract, but like, here's what's happening.
Yeah.
You know, just taking that time to explain and make sure that no one feels like they're getting shorted something, or like what I thought was interesting is you came up with you're booking for the time you're in the studio, not the time you're recording in the studio, which makes sense when you say it, but it's like, I didn't think of that. But it's like, if you have people show up early to their recording and then they're waiting on a guest, that's also time that we aren't doing anything. Like that's
Yeah.
just time we're just sitting around. Like
It also is taking up
Yeah.
someone else's time
Exactly.
afterwards, which isn't fair to like.
Yeah, if
for
you
a
have
client relation business.
if you have an end-to-end schedule, it's like we have a podcast 1 starting at this time, podcast 2 starts 30 minutes after the first one ends.
Yeah.
Well, if the podcast 1's guest shows up late and they run into that time and we got to reconfigure, then it's just a chain reaction. So
David, our roommate,
Mhm.
host of S&D, or my roommate, he talked about it. It was like a doctor's office where it's like, oh, you hate waiting in the doctor's office, but that's because someone else showed up late to
Yep.
their appointment.
Yep.
It caused you to be late, and no one likes that. I think I know we kind of closing in towards the end of our time. We talked about a lot of like the pain points, a lot of learning stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe we should end the show talking about some of our favorite moments recording.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe from the week or in general, just to like highlight some of the people that have been here and like the fun
Okay.
the fun side of it. Like
I think this is something we should do weekly, and we should try to keep it to the weekly scope.
yeah.
But for this one,
It is going to be interesting because this is like the only one that's retrospective on 4 months. The next
Yeah.
one's gonna be like, all right, what happened this week?
yep. I think favorite moments, like definitely Tony Awards asking me to be on the show.
Yeah.
Because they're just a fun show. It was
First
great.
client, great show.
First client, fantastic show. They
So nice.
had me watch a movie with Jennifer Lopez that was awful. And it was just wonderful to be on a show and just shit on the show for like an hour and a half, you know,
Yeah.
this movie. And it was tons of fun. And then also S&D, Sean and David, they do these prank calls on their show.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of them give me so much anxiety, but
Yeah.
sometimes I am like dying behind the curtain, but in like this, like at the controls, I'm like trying to keep it in. Like today they did a call where,
Wait, the episode's not going to come out yet.
yeah, well, whatever. But like Sean was having a good prank call on this. They were kind of connecting with the guy on the phone. And he asked him if he wanted to hang out sometime. And the guy was down and offered him his email address. And I was so stressed out. I had to take the headphones off and walk away from it. I was like, this is too much.
That's because you were recording with them a lot at the beginning. And then I did one episode. My first episode, I felt the same way when the prank calls came up. But then some of the people like would call over their coworkers and be like so in on the joke and just laughing in the background. I'm like, these people, it's some of their jobs. This isn't their dream.
Yep.
They're trying to get through the day, and this prank call brought them some joy.
Yep.
Let me try and think. I mean, it's always Shatha's comments about how easy it is. It was really like, that's the goal. Like we're trying, like
getting compliments in the studio.
Well, getting compliments, but also being like, that is exactly what we set out to do.
Yeah.
We didn't ask for that feedback. It just came to us naturally. It's really nice to hear like, hey, you are delivering on your goals.
Yep. I was talking with comedian Kevin Mulharen the other day, and we were just messaging and joking about what the best things for a comedian are.
Yeah.
At the same time, without reading each other's messages, we both said the number one best thing about being a comedian. Number 2 is crushing.
Yeah.
Number 1 is another comedian you respect telling you you're funny. And that's kind of what that is. Like that same feeling is when people come here, they record. Maybe it's their first time being here, or they are like weeks into recording. They're just like, yeah, I just love the space. I want to recommend it to people. When Vanessa Jackson came on my show and she's like, this is amazing. I'll definitely be back. And then she was on Copay with April Body this week. And she came in and she was like, I told you I'd be back. And April and their other guest, I forgot her name. I feel so bad. But
we'll put in her name in the show notes.
But yeah, they were just so impressed. Like, wow, look at this place. This is great. And that feeling of like, oh, we have some connections, and they want to. It's like a place that you can show off. Something we're really proud of.
Yeah, I think no one has walked in and been like, oh, what is this?
Yeah,
that's been a pretty good feeling because it just took a shit ton of time to put it together.
Yeah.
If you weren't even anywhere disappointed, I'd be so sad. I'm just trying to think of one other like really tangible thing to a show, just because we've done some. I don't know the number, but I think we're over 40 recordings now, which is pretty good considering like our growth has been like 50%. It was like 100% for the first 3 months, and now we're getting to a point where it's like it's not sustainable to keep doubling it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of like the Tony Awards is such a fun time because it's so laid back, and they literally I threw these microphones up right before they were recording. Didn't have a chance to test it, but I'm like, this is gonna work. And this was pre lifters, and they just rolled with it. And it's always so much fun. Actually, no, there was this episode I think came out of Danielle's podcast, female intern, Danielle Deludi. Danielle has such like, the first time I heard her record, I'm like, she should be on NPR. Like her voice is just so soothing. The way she goes about talking about conducting the conversations, but Veronica Garza was on the show, and it was just like they're talking off air. Veronica went on a date with this person, which you know me, it's side stuff, dating, a very relatable topic to me. And they just talked an hour about this connection Veronica had with this person she just started to see, and I was like, oh, fate exists.
Yeah.
It was just like, I was sitting there, and it's, like it can get mundane being behind the board sometimes, trying to listen, try and take notes. There's sometimes just like, it's a job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that episode, I was just like glued to it, listening. We get like a sneak peek of podcasts coming up.
Yes.
And it's really fun. That episode was just like, oh, I don't exactly know. I don't think Danielle knew. I don't think I knew what exactly the show was, but I'm like, this is such an engaging story.
Yes.
I just want to keep listening.
One thing I love about female intern Danielle Deludi, that show, is Danielle turns all the lights off in the studio.
No video, by the way.
No video. And she plugs in some pink Christmas lights and sets them on the desk. And it's like such a moody lighting.
Lamp.
And the salt lamp.
Yeah.
It's such moody lighting. And like her show is very similar to mine, where it's kind of just like an interview show.
Yeah.
But she's not afraid to like ask personal questions and
Very
kinda,
good, nice approach about it.
yeah, very good approach. Very like I'm like watching her interview someone. I'm like, this is what my show is lacking. I'm lacking the bravery to be like, how did this hurt you emotionally? You know?
Yeah, Danielle's really, really good at that.
She's great. So
Um,
those are fun. And I get what you're saying about like, it's a job. Sometimes I'm sitting back there and like I'm just burnt out for the week and I'm making sure the
Yeah.
levels are right, but I'm not tuning in. Then every once in a while, I get a podcast where I'm fully listening the whole time. Like
yeah.
I've noticed I actually listen to much less podcasts now that since we started the studio, just because we listen to so
We're
much,
literally
you know?
listening and watching podcasts. That is our
Yeah,
job, which
all
is
the
pretty
time.
sweet.
Yep.
And then just a little side note too, it hasn't launched yet, but Danielle and Shatha were on a podcast together.
Yep.
which is
We
real
do have a
nice.
crossover app.
Yeah.
We had I was on S&D for an episode.
Oh, that's
a
true. Yeah, I mean, you
crossover.
are. I always think of you as outside of the studio, like clientless, because you're not a client,
Right.
but you are.
I'm an exploiter.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But yeah, we've had some collaborations, so it's good. It's
It's
going
good.
well.
And I love bringing, because my show I have a new guest every week. I love bringing guests to here because they're all so impressed.
And I
They're all
wake up
like,
to
wow.
you in the morning,
Yeah.
bringing people over to my place.
People, let me tell you, comedians do not love being somewhere at noon on a Saturday.
No,
But it's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so guys, that's pretty much it for
Subscribe.
Yeah, definitely subscribe to the YouTube
It's your
channel.
podcast.
You can find the studio, like we said. If you want to message us for rates, if you're in the city, you want a podcast studio, it's myfriendsbasementstudio@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Instagram at myfriendsbasementstudio. And soon to be website,
Very soon.
myfriendsbasementstudio.com and myfriendsbasement.studio.
Yep. We got both those domains. And even if you're visiting, like Maxim said, we've had people that are one-stop
Yeah.
shop. They come in, they're traveling to New York. We set them up. We know a lot of comedians too aren't making a ton of money on
Yep.
the road. Come on in. We'll hook you up. We buy drinks from people from when we have special guests and
Yep.
stuff, and we just try and treat you like family. So
Yeah, we're just
Come
trying to have a good time and a good business. But yeah,
trying to make a living at what we love to do.
yeah,
We're doing that for ourselves. We're trying to help other people do it too.
yeah, in the most chill way possible.
Oh, so chill. I don't have to leave my house.
Yeah, you don't have to leave your basement. Connor gets no vitamin D from this
Oh,
business.
God.
Business.
No.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.